All right, ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to the director of that film, Mr. Whit Stillman. And Charlie himself, Mr. Taylor Nichols. Guys, how are we?
Very well.
Good to see you again. It's been a while since we've done this, but I'm so thankful you're here again. There were a lot of people that have never seen this theater before, and then I think there are a lot of big fans here, and it's always great, I think, to see this movie with a crowd. I think it's fun. It's fun to hear the laughter. It's fun to take the ride. Watching it again, I just am so delighted when I see this film. Number one, I love its tone. I love the way that you sort of capture a specific time and place, and yet at the same time, it's timeless. Part of it's Christmas, I think. It's our first Christmas movie of the year, which I always love. So Whit, tell me, is that part of the design of this film, or did that just kind of happen? That sort of, timeless quality, the checkered cabs, the sort of, I don't know, the air of the film is so interesting.
Well, sometimes.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Sometimes you get lucky with low budget constraints. So I think if I had more money, I would have made it a specific year in the past, but we didn't. So we could say not so long ago and suggest that it wasn't quite when we were shooting the film, which was I think the winter of '89. It was sort of January, February '89. And we wanted to just further back. I mean, I would have gone back to '68 or something. And I think it ended up working out, so we sort of hunt down checker cabs. It's sort of weird sound, isn't
You guys hear?
it?
Can you hear?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay. So we do things like hunt down checker cabs and try not to show things that are too speaking of the moment. And they're very old cars parked in Park Avenue all night long in the winter. They're not leaving their late model cars, so it sort of made it a rule.
Also, I find it so romantic. New York City in the late 80s. There's something about that time I think that's so wonderful to watch on the big screen. Can you talk about that, just shooting in New York City at that specific time? I know this is a great independent film story, and I want to get into that a little bit too. But just New York City in this era, I think is just so magical. At Christmas too.
It was cold.
Remember that.
Yeah, I don't know. Why do you think this is magical?
No, more like 80s New York City. Just that sort of that time.
It's the same dumb
crime. Maybe I'm just nostalgic for the period. When it comes to these specific, this clearly came out of your own experiences. You sort of went to these parties and built this screenplay out of sort of the group that you had been a part of. Could you talk about that, sort of the real life counterparts to these characters?
Yeah, well, I still see a lot of the people. It was actually thanks to the promotion for the film that I got to know that group again. I guess one of the guys I'd stayed in touch with, but the New York Times wanted to do an article about them and stuff like that. So we started seeing each other more and then seeing each other regularly. And over time, I started thinking that, boy, these people were really, really key to the movie. I mean, they were really funny and really interesting and really different. And I sort of cheated because, as a writer, because they're so similar to the characters on the screen. And in fact, Judgmental Jane, the dark-haired girl, she's not speaking to me now for something, so she's still Judgmental Jane. And the sort of happy Sally Fowler character is still the happy Sally Fowler character. And so it's sort of wonderful to have known those people. I was really lucky to have that sort of intense period. And for me, I think the reason why 15 years later I wanted to write about that was I was horribly depressed first year in college. And by accident, as a Fourierist, it was unusual. I was invited to these parties. And it was like 2 weeks outside of that depression, and then you go back to university, it's back into the depression. So the 2 weeks sort of stood out in my mind.
May I ask, were you Tom Townsend, or were you Nick, or
Well, you know, the thing is, the question in a story are all the identification characters. And originally it was supposed to be Tom Townsend conventionally, and then I realized like what a jerk the guy was. And not that I was a jerk, but the character I wrote was a jerk. Maybe it was autobiographical. And then I thought it really should be Audrey's film. It really she's the more sympathetic part of it. And then at the same time, I wanted to have the sociological point of view, the doom, all that, the Charlie character, and also the Nick Smith point of view. And so it seemed like at a certain point there were 4 identification characters. And recently we've been showing the film as sort of somewhat 30th anniversary going around with the film. And I normally come back in to watch it when you guys are at the bar with the man at the bar, talking about
Roger.
being doomed to failure. And I think that's the 5th identification character. His presence in the movie.
Yeah. It's funny. Watching it this time, I noticed the word failure come up a lot.
And that's his specialty.
Yep.
I also
He's the failure guy. Like people, when they talk, say, I really like the failure guy.
See, I never heard that.
But the thing that's sort of interesting is that when we were making the film, none of us had worked. This was like our first project. The only person I think on the film who actually was a pro was Taylor Nichols. Taylor Nichols was
I was doing musical theater, that's what I was doing.
Successful employee. He paid jobs, check cleared in musical theater. And he is still the only member of our group who's constantly working.
Silly fellow rat pack.
Constantly working. I'm unemployed almost all the time. And he is constantly working. Turn on the TV, there he is.
So true.
And so the success continues. He was successful before the film. He's successful after the film.
And Taylor, I mean, you, I love whenever I see you on, you're in a great show that I love called Pen 15 a couple years ago. Yeah, and you're fantastic in it. And yet every time I see you, I'm like, oh, Taylor Nichols is in this. I think of Metropolitan. I think of Charlie. And I'm just wondering if that kind of has followed you throughout your career, this particular role.
I don't know that it's followed me, but I've always been really proud of it. And it's funny, I saw the movie when it first came out at the Cannes Film Festival, I think. And then I didn't see it for probably 25 years. And maybe it was at the 25th anniversary screening that I saw it for the first time in a long time. And it brought back so many memories. It's such a wonderful film. I mean, I just laughed at so many things that all the characters say, and Whit and I were laughing at that just now. So to answer your question, I don't know that it has followed me, but I'm proud to have been in it. And it was my first movie, and what a great first movie.
How did you kind of tackle this? I feel like Charlie is one of the more difficult roles throughout. You have an arc, and some of those monologues I think are so precise and so nuanced, and yet at the same time you make it seem effortless, as if you're trying to find these big words and big concepts.
It was a huge learning process, and as Whit said, I think it was all of our first movie. And the thing that always stays with me, and I've mentioned this before, is that when you shoot these scenes on Tuesday night, late at night, you're done shooting it, and you don't get to go back to it on Wednesday. And I can remember thinking, God, I'd like to go back and do that scene again.
As I was watching, I was thinking that too. I wasn't laughing, I was crying.
But you know, we have to learn those huge monologues and put them down, and once they're down, you're done. You move on to the next scene. So,
was it a difficult transition going from the stage to the screen in terms of how that
and also just being still? You know, when you're on, I think I was doing Sugar Babies when Metropolitan came out with Mickey Rooney and Ann Miller, and you know that's all over the place. You know, we zing, ba-da-da. And in a film like this, we had to sit very still, and it was hard to do.
Right.
Yeah, it's still hard to do.
Taylor finally got to dance though when he was reading the Bible in Barcelona, the Bible dance, and it was really good to have someone with a musical
With a dance
theater
background.
dance background. Yeah.
It's also quite a leap to go from Mickey Rooney to Chris Eichman.
Yeah. Well, they're both funny, so.
Both
Well,
funny.
Taylor actually, so we had this audition with tons of people coming in, and we had a sort of table read, and Taylor came up to me afterwards and said, yeah, but what I like is that the relationship between Charlie and Tom evolves in that way, and they come back, and at the end, they have that alliance to save Audrey. And it was as if he was saying this as if everything else was really pretty bad and mediocre. Finally, he felt that kind of saved it, that kind of resurrected. You know, that was. And then I was thinking, gosh, he's been reading all this fascinating monologues about sociology. And he doesn't say that's great, he just says
The relationship.
And then we're in the editing room trying to cut out stuff about sociology, you know. Do we have any coverage of this? Can we cut down on and it was really true. He spotted, I mean, the whole thing of character arc. I don't think I knew about character arcs and things like that when I was writing the script. And so you know, it's good because he gets to be friends with someone else. It's not good because of all this fascinating stuff he's saying. So it was the beginning of my education.
I'm glad that I was a part of that.
Yeah.
It's so surprising that you say that about the screenplay and not really kind of, you know, maybe uninstinctually or instinctually finding character arcs. Because I feel like the film is so beautifully symmetrical in a lot of ways, and just each scene is so carefully constructed in a lot of ways. I mean, even in the way you frame things, it feels like such an assured debut.
The writing process was sort of progressing, maybe getting to the halfway point, and then I thought, like, how is this going to end? Like, is there an ending to this story? So I went and had the ending, and had this sort of Southampton ending, the chase for Audrey, and a lot of funky stuff. And so I had an ending, and I had the first half, and it was like the Transcontinental Railroad, trying to get the two tracks to kind of link somewhere, and the golden spike. We never found the golden spike, but there's a very strong steel spike that we found. But I think that is a big question when people are writing or working on this kind of film. Like, is there going to be an ending? Is something going to be resolved? And I think it's good that there's finally some movement. Exciting checker cab ride to Southampton. A lot of, you know, it's not exactly a car chase, but it's one car. It's a car chase with one car.
It's an exciting build-up when they start looking for the car and the Hertz and the Avis. I love that whole scene. When you were developing this screenplay, obviously it went through a lot of iterations, and I think it's also very interesting in terms of the context of the time. This is indie film, like 1988, 89, 1990. This is, you know, Sex Lies comes out this year, and it's such a big movie. Was it a huge surprise from when you wrote that screenplay to getting a screenplay nomination with an Oscar?
I mean, it was not a thing where there's tons of rejection, like people not wanting to pick it up. We were showing to small distributors, and there's no marketing hook. Young people today won't be interested in this, and all this negativity. And then we had a really brilliant producer's rep, Ira Deutschman, who had been a distributor, and he managed, we'd been rejected by Sundance, and he managed to sort of create a lot of talk about the movie. We got in Sundance the back way. And what's your question, actually?
Your Oscar.
Yeah, getting to that.
Oh, yeah, my Oscar
So when we were at Sundance, the whole thing was, oh, it's not Sex Lies and Videotape. So, oh, it's not Sex Lies. So no one would buy it. It's not Sex Lies and Videotape, which is pretty clearly not Sex Lies and Videotape. And you know, all those kind of insightful comments of people who don't want to buy your film. And we sold it for Canada, and the new director's series was divided. They were debating whether to invite it or not. And I knew that the guy selecting for the big Cannes Film Festival hated it. So the sales agent showed it to the second ranked part of Cannes, saying, if you choose it, we'll go with you, we won't show it to the competition. And so they like that, and they put us in Cannes. And that, so finally, with 3 festivals, and you had really had an interesting comment about acting, quoting Jack Lemmon, it's not your lucky break, it's your 50 lucky breaks.
Well, yeah, I think the quote is, Jack Lemmon says, you don't need 1 lucky break, you need 50 lucky breaks.
Yeah. So we needed the 3 lucky festival breaks to launch the film into that, because it wasn't Sex, Lies, and the City. It never was, and never will be.
That said, I feel when I watch it, it's ushering in a weird a genre at that time, which was sort of exploring late 20-somethings and what do they do in the wake of school and before their lives begin. And yet for me, this movie stands out amongst those. Those don't really, I don't know, they don't resonate the way this one does. I think it's a pretty human thing that we all go through that is pretty reflective here. What do you think that is? I don't know if you have an answer for that, but why do you think that this one is the one that, for instance, you know, the Criterion Collection selected as being a reason?
Well, I think the age is an interesting age where they're out of sort of the childhood sadness, you know, a sad 14-year-old, all that. It's kind of the first moment of really taking different paths on their own steam. And I think what makes people look forward so much to the first year of college is that idea of freedom and the chance to go in all directions. And it's also what leads to the profound depressions people feel when they get there. And so it's sort of the ideal crossroads moment. And I guess I've done 2 films in that age group, Damsels in Distress and this, and it's very appealing in sort of story terms.
You two ended up working together again on Barcelona, which is an incredible film that you all need to see. And you worked with Chris again, of course. What was it like kind of returning to the set this time with Whit? How did that change?
I've always enjoyed working with Whit. Whit's difficult to work with. He has a very clear idea of what he wants. And I think we spent a lot of time trying to find that clear idea of what he wanted. But he's also created a real family. Tonight we had dinner with Tushka, who's in Barcelona. And so he's created this real group of, I think, artists, actors, filmmakers. And it's once you feel that kind of acceptance, you're much more relaxed in putting your best foot forward. And so that's what I liked about working with Whit on Barcelona. And I did a small part in Last Days of Disco. Thank you very much.
You had 2 parts.
I did 2 parts.
You had 2 characters, Last Days of Disco, and came back for Damsels in Distress.
But I was going to say, though, because Whit has talked for a long time about doing a Western with Chris and me. And
yeah, still want to do it.
damn, you should write that.
What?
Yeah, time is running out. I want to do that.
Why has this not happened yet?
I really want to do it. We like it because if 2 people are riding on horseback, they're facing the same direction. So you can get their dialogue in a 2-shot.
It's a 2-shot.
So it's perfect for low budget. You're always trying to get people, that's why we do all the walk talks. You just have the camera in front of them and they're blabbing away.
And two people at the bar. It's a 2-shot.
Yeah.
At the
No, the
campfire.
bar scene will be more complicated. We have really cool ideas for the bar scene. I think about our Western still quite a bit.
I will demand this every year you come back, that we get this started.
We can come back every year?
Yes, absolutely. Can we
Yes.
let's take some questions from the audience here. Yes, back there. You, yes. Yep.
I just wondered if, Mr. Stillman, when's your next film that you're going to come out with?
Your next film.
In 14 months and 3 weeks. No, I have no idea. No, thanks for the question, but I'm in Los Angeles doing something. I don't know, failure can't come later. have some patches of not making films, and
It's a tough business.
Yeah, it's a building year. It's building 5 years. No, but I hope to one day have another film or 5. I hope to make 5 more films.
How do you feel about the current landscape in terms of making movies? Are you optimistic about where
Yes.
we're at? You are.
Optimistic.
Why so?
Because we've got to make it work. We've got to bring back cinemas and bring back independent distribution and all that stuff. And I think people appreciate it and enjoy being back out and about watching films.
I also think that there's a marketplace for it because TV has been taken over by serial shows, 8 episodes or many more. That there is a niche market for that 2-hour story. So I think that there's room for that, especially at lower budgets as opposed to just Marvel movies.
I think there's some sort of karmic thing where if it's being financed, essentially being seen on TV, a lot of those films end up as TV movies. I mean, yes, there are films that transcend that, but there's some TV movie thing, and it can be really entertaining and really good, but it's not it's not the theatrical.
Sure, yeah.
And so I really...
We feel that tonight. I mean, it's a clear difference when you're watching this at home versus watching this.
And really, they're different worlds. Like, there's just so much sort of executive control and formulaic pressures, I think, when you get into non-film, non-indie spirit film. And there are all those measures.
And what's great about the Cinematheque is that people often think you need to see the Marvel movies on the big screen, but the truth is Metropolitan, or Sex, Lies, and Videotape, are so great on the big screen with an audience.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
Of course.
And it'd be really good, for instance, to be able to come back and see an old Fred Astaire movie.
Mm-hmm.
Next Monday.
Like The Gay Divorcee on 35mm.
That's right. That will be happening soon.
Great music.
It's funny you should mention
1934. And as it happens, we will be introducing The Gay Divorcee, Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, at your... How do you
Los
pronounce
Feliz
that
3.
town? Los Feliz?
Los Feliz, yes.
Number 3, not number 1, number 2?
No, but it is the number 1 screen. It's at the Los Feliz 3. That's
Los
all it
Feliz
is.
3. Okay.
And that's
So
Sunday.
we're showing it
Yeah.
at 1 p.m. on Sunday.
Yes.
But it's very far from here, so people won't come.
Oh, they'll come. They will drive there.
And there's a lot of traffic. Is there traffic at 12:30
No,
on Sunday?
that's why it's perfect.
Okay.
That's why it's perfect.
And you can have brunch in Las Vegas?
Yeah, the House of Pies is right across the street.
Yeah.
Red 62.
So it's on the website, right?
It is not on the website.
On the website.
Oh, on the website. Yeah. It is on the website. not on the
It's
website.
further east.
Yes.
But West,
He's
a
from New
lot
York.
of West Siders are amongst us.
Yes, many. And they will travel. Yes, sir. Yes.
I was wondering, the montage near the end of or near the beginning of the Southampton sequence, where there's like a bunch of like sort of setting the scene things that are just in Southampton, but like most of them are like closed buildings or like signs that say like keep out. Was there any reason that you weren't able to get like more shots of like other like more like open places?
Well, I thought that was interesting because so many people know the Hamptons during the summer when everyone's there, and like very few people are ever out there in February, or I guess when is this? This would be December. This would be December, late December, early January in the film, but we were actually there in February, but it would be the same thing. And so that was the thing that seemed interesting, having everything closed and off season. So it's just such a mob scene for 4 months. All the people, everything happening, and then this whole period when it's deserted and cold and all that. But thank you.
Yes.
Hi, my name's Doyle, proud member of the SRP. Anyways, first time I saw Metropolitan, I was 10 years old.
Wow.
32 now. And I've watched it, I think, every holiday season. So, do the math, long time. So thank you for that, first and foremost. I guess my first comment question
like Charlie Brown, when parents aren't there. Wow, wow, wow.
And the second part was Charlie and Nick. Characters are so different from Barcelona, Last City Disco. Their characters in Metropolitan. What inspired them, Whit, for you to write those? Where did they come up from?
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. I mean, we weren't a SAG film, so we really couldn't afford parents. And Isabel Keeley's mother came to wish her happy birthday on set, and said, "Mrs. Keeley's, could you possibly help us out in the film and play Audrey's mother?" And so that's Cynthia's mother plays Audrey's mother in that scene. And she was a little nervous about it, and she's a wonderful lady. And so, I mean, it was really part of the territory that the parents were very discreet about not making an appearance at a late night after party. And I guess these were sort of sprawling Park Avenue apartments, and they must have had bedrooms in the back that couldn't hear what was going on in the front of the apartment, or didn't want to hear, or pretended not to hear. And so I think there was some fear that people would still be there when parents got up for breakfast, and we should clear out before they. But Nick would stay and have breakfast with the parents. And then the script for Barcelona had started before this script. I was on set playing this stupid American in a Spanish film and seeing how complicated filming was, and put aside the Barcelona script to try to do something really doable and small. And so the cousin dynamic, those two characters, the sort of basis of that was already laid down. And then I was really fascinated to see the kind of friendship between Chris Hageman and Taylor, that they sort of semi-roomed together. They shared apartments on both coasts, and they had a really good rapport, and we all became friends. And it just was, shooting the film, writing the film, it seems really logical that they'd be the stars of those two cousins. Thank you for the question. And we had a hat question, one of the hat people.
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth.
Hi.
I can't believe that you guys are in front of me. I'm such a big fan. And my question is, do you remember what inspired the cha-cha scene and what it was like to film that?
It's just incredibly embarrassing to film.
I don't know, it just seemed like the essence of the frivolity of what was coming down to us from the past. The sort of escapist, sort of fun, silly dancing. And we actually did learn that in fourth grade dancing school. And it was, as a fourth grader doing the cha-cha with your cousin, it was kind of a memorable experience. And it just seemed like it would be a dynamic scene. We were looking for dynamic scenes. And I'm glad how it worked out. I mean, it played into the trailer and all that.
Speaking of that, I really do. I don't think we've ever spoken about the score of this movie, which I think is so fantastic. It's sort of a mixture of classical and Christmas themes, but then there's that great kind of jazzy. Could you talk about that the whole soundtrack and how that sort of developed? And
one of the problems of the shoot was we didn't have the soundtrack. We couldn't play the soundtrack for you guys. It was an odd combination, but a wonderful combination of talents. So Tom Judson is a performer, and I think he's going back on tour now. He does a wonderful cabaret act, and he had these fantastic melodies that were just so appropriate for the film. And he let us sort of have them, and then was going off on tour, and we needed someone to kind of complete the film, and we had some music we liked. And the editor had the idea of calling the 92nd Street Y in New York and asking the head of the music program if he could recommend some composers. So one composer came in and laughed through the rough cut and then said, "You really need Mark Swaza for this job." And then another composer came in who was a really talented pianist also, and conductor, and he just laughed and laughed through the film. And he said, "You're thinking Mark Suazo for this job." And then Mark Suazo came in, dead silence throughout the film, no reaction. And he just did an absolutely wonderful job, and we've worked together on all 5 films and the TV pilot we did. And the fellow who was number 2 was also a pianist and a conductor for some of the orchestras, I think, for both the first 2 films. And so that was a great experience. It's a little, I was actually watching the credits now, it's a little unfair to Tom Judson because I think he had sort of a secondary credit, and he really did a lot of work on it.
It's fantastic. I love that aspect. One last question before we go. Yes, of course, we all want to see the Western. That's absolutely true. But have you ever thought about reuniting this group for a possible, movie? I would love to see that, by the way.
I would really like to work with all again and think of projects we could do together. I've been thinking about that a lot. But I don't want to continue the story. I mean, I want to just leave it. I mean, I think Taylor had that just magnificent moment when he comes up and pretends to be not displeased. He pretends to be generous. I know how he really was thinking then about Tom stealing Audrey away from him. But we sort of do complete it a little bit because in Last Days of Disco, we have the Metropolitan characters because the real people, one thing they said when Studio 54 opened was that it's Dev season all over again. Studio 54 was Dev season all over again, because if for some reason you've had to dress up in black tie or formal wear for some charity ball, then you could maybe get into Studio 54. So there were a lot of people sort of dressed up there. And we had Audrey and you with dates. So you and Audrey were friends and still in touch. Tom was not in the picture, but you were with other people. You weren't dating each other. And then we also had Sally and Fred in another scene, sleeping. Fred was sleeping in the disco. Anyway, thank you very much for coming.
Guys, thank you very, very much. It was a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Whit Stillman, Taylor Nichols. Thanks, everybody.